Hi, this video is the second in a series looking at the relationship between population, the environment, and food security. And in this one, we're going to look at the relationship between population and the prospect of overconsumption. In a previous video, we talked about Malthus, who was concerned that too many people would be too many mouths to feed, and our ability to grow food would not keep up with our rate of population increase. That, by the way, has more or less been discredited. Our ability to grow food was far greater than Malthus anticipated. Uh, Nevertheless, population is one of the main causes of environmental stress and resource scarcity, but population is really only a problem when it's combined with affluence and a high rate of consumption. So if you live in a country with a lot of people, but if your average person is very poor, then the amount of consumption that's taking place is going to remain fairly low. But let's say that same country increases its level of affluence. That is, people begin to find more lucrative work, their buying power goes up. Pretty soon, they start consuming a lot more as their lifestyles improve. So instead of living at the level of subsistence, people begin living with some level of material comfort, and that means buying more things. So the surprise fact about consumption, when it comes to resource consumption, new population growth by itself, the effective population growth, is practically negligible. And in fact, if we look at every country in the world, the places where the most population growth is taking place are also some of the poorest countries on earth. And so that's in some ways good news for the overall global issue of resource consumption because the new people coming on to the planet tend to be so poor that they can't consume very much. So they're not really causing that much environmental stress, at least on the global scale. Now, that's not the same at the national level. These same countries also tend to be in very environmentally sensitive regions, most of them very arid and dry. And so, out of extreme necessity to farm and produce food, there are some locally problematic issues happening with desertification, over farming, and those kinds of things in order to meet just subsistence level demand of consumption in some of the poorest countries on earth. But from the global perspective, roughly two-thirds or 60% of global consumption is happening in the 10% richest countries. And so you can see that drops off pretty precipitously, that even in the top 20%, we're getting up to about 80% of global consumption of the 20% richest countries. And so, as I mentioned, most of the population growth is happening in the bottom 30 to 40%, where you can see that of the global resources, less than 5% are being consumed in these high growth rate countries in terms of population. Now, that doesn't mean those countries won't one day see progress. And with progress comes improved buying power, as we said. So there could be a problem down the road, but currently the real problem with consumption is not the poor countries, it's the wealthy countries. So when it comes to the question of are there too many of us in terms of resources and population, we could summarize it this way. Roughly 90% of the world's current population growth is in the poorest countries that are located primarily in sub-Saharan Africa. The global wealthy must confront their massive consumption of global resources rather than try to limit poor nations' population growth, which has really very little to do with global resource consumption and global environmental problems that are the result of that consumption. And at the same time, we can ask the question, right, what right do we have to impose limits on poor nations? Uh, Today's wealthy countries were once very poor, high population growth uh, centers. And now that center has shifted, and today's poor countries might one day see progress. What right do we have to limit their population growth? It's somewhat hypocritical. So those are some of the key questions All right, so that's it for this one. We'll come back with some more videos following this. Thank you.